Hey, patrons.
Hello.
You're finding Annika and I at an interesting moment. We're having one of our morning coffee talks, and we both just got like 12 hours of sleep for different reasons.
In about the same time frame too.
I
Like I
know.
only woke up like 10 minutes before Farah this morning. So,
Yeah. Um,
good night.
so we're caffeinating and having breakfast, and we realized we needed to record because of my insomnia and Annika's flu, that we needed to record a makeup Vlogmas for yesterday, so we decided just to do it now.
Yeah.
Um, One of our patrons requested like just knitting tips and tricks we use and tidbits that we have used personally, tried and used personally. So we just thought we could talk about that over our morning coffee and yeah, share some things we've done. Do you have any that come to spring to mind?
Mm, yeah. So, I mean, the first thing that came to mind for me personally was when I am casting on a project with a large amount of stitches, I will place um, removable or not technically removable stitch markers like every 10 to 20 stitches. That way I don't have to keep going back and like counting individual stitches as I'm casting on. Like then I can count by 10s or 20s
I
or
do it by like 50s.
mm, yeah, I lose count by the time that I get to 50. So I do smaller personally. And then that way it's just quicker to keep counting if I have to put it down while casting on or whatnot. Yeah.
Um, I thought I could share too. So I this year taught myself how to knit continental, and so that I could do color work, which I'm now working on and loving. So I used to be a thrower, and so if any of you are throwers out there, and I was a pretty ardent thrower, I thought I would kind of quickly explain the process I used to do that because it felt so impossible before I started. So the first thing I did was kind of two phases. Well, I did multiple things and I gave myself space. I wasn't like, I'm going to teach myself to knit continental by just immediately starting off knitting continental. The first thing I did was I started crocheting granny square afghans. That was step one. Because that just got me used to starting to use my left hand for like holding tension and stuff. And I didn't expect it to be perfect. That's why I made it a scrappy thing. So when you start these first projects, don't like pick like something really that you have high expectations of. Like I'm going to just start doing scrappy afghans. So I don't care if there's mistakes. And yeah. But then I was still knitting regular when I knit with my right hand. Then I adapted the way I knit with my right hand. So when I used to knit with my right hand, I would hold the yarn like this. And now it feels difficult, awkward doing this, but I would hold the yarn like this and like literally hold it and wrap it. So what I started doing was wrapping it around and tensioning it and holding it around my finger so I could just wrap with my pointer finger rather than holding it in my whole hand. That was step two. Then I got really used to that. And I think that with the crocheting, that is then the next thing I was able to do is start knitting continental. So it's like I was used to tensioning yarn on this hand how I needed to, and then I was able to, yeah, now I'm able to do it. I don't know. It's very bizarre. But I don't know. If somebody's wanting to learn to knit continental so they can do color work, try that.
And
And
for me,
when I'm not doing color work, I still knit right-handed. But yeah.
I started crocheting before I learned how to knit. And so I started knitting continental right off the bat. And to learn how to knit English style, because it's a lot easier to teach children in knitting classes to knit English style than it is continental, because it's what's the word I'm looking for? Like, it just makes sense to their brains more. I found this infographic several years ago that makes its way around the internet every Halloween, that gives like spooky directions on how to knit. And like that infographic helped me learn how to knit English style. And just because like it's, I don't know, it, and kids find it super fun too, because you're literally telling them to like stab something and scoop out its guts. And like kids just think that's absolutely hilarious. And it's also really fun too when like teaching classes and the parents come back to pick up their children after the classes, and the kids were like, "Mom, I stabbed so many monsters and scooped out their guts today," and the parents will be like, "What did you, my child, while I was gone? Like, what happened?"
Awesome.
But yeah, so that's super fun. But I used that infographic personally to learn how to like English knit instead of continental. So yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to think of other little things I've done. I find too, people have often asked me, like, I know I'm not having a lot of FOs right now, but that's because I'm working on a million different things. But people have been like, when I was sticking mostly to one project, they'd be like, how are you getting so much knitting done? Like in the beginning when I first began the podcast. And the answer was, I always carry knitting with me. And so I would say that. Um, and some of it is just the issue of thinking about what you're doing and having the right bag to take with you. So, like, I have bags that I can just hold over a wrist and knit out of. Like, this bag you can do that with, a sock. It's like I'll put a sock in it and like so I can knit standing in line at the grocery store. But I always have knitting with me. So when I'm on public transit, 9 times out of 10, I'm knitting. When I'm waiting in the therapy waiting room, I'm knitting. When I'm waiting for my prescriptions to be filled, I'm knitting. When I go out to dinner with people, I'm knitting. Usually it's people I know, but if it's people I don't know, I ask if they mind if I knit, because it also does help me focus on the conversation. And 9 times out of 10, people don't mind. Or sometimes rather than asking, I'll say, just so you know, I'm going to knit because it really helps me focus and pay attention to our conversation, but I'm completely paying attention to you, just so they know.
Yeah. And for me, it's the same too. Like, while watching videos for school for classwork, I'm knitting. While, like, in the car with other people and they're driving and we're going somewhere, since nothing out here is close by, like, I'm knitting. Mm-hmm. Like, and also too, like, while waiting to see my psychiatrist or therapist, I'm knitting. And generally during those visits, I'm also knitting, like, the whole entire time too. And yeah. I think a tip that I have too is also like I've been told that I pick up things really quickly. Mm-hmm. Like, and I would like to say it's because of like my superior intellect, but it's not. It's because I know the style of learning that works best for me, and I'm very much a visual learner. Like, if I see someone do it, I can generally pick it up decently quickly after that. And so, like, watching YouTube videos works really well for me for learning new skills. But if that doesn't work for you, um, like learn new knitting skills or whatnot the way that works best for you. Like, don't just be like, oh, I have to watch this YouTube video because this is what everyone's suggesting, even though, like, I just don't get it. And, like, go and learn new skills the way that works best for you.
Yeah, I will watch YouTube videos, but also sometimes I just have to try stuff, is how I learn, by doing it. And so give yourself permission to fail, to try things and screw up and then try again. Um, and sometimes you just have to, if you're a learner like that, like I am, yeah. Like when I first knit a sock, I found a pattern for a sock and just cast on and started knitting it and just did it. And did my first like heels have gaps and were there little things here and there? Yeah. It wasn't a perfect sock, but that's okay. Like I learned how to knit socks. Um, I often think too, sometimes people go too far ahead and get overwhelmed because the opposite can also be true. So, like, when I started knitting the socks, I'll also say a tip I have is doing one thing at a time. Like, I give a pattern a brief skim, but if I see stuff that I'm like, ooh, I don't know how that's gonna work. I'm like, that's okay, you'll know when you get there. Like when I get there, I'll be able to see it, you know?
Yeah.
And so what I'll do is if there's a thing that I'm like, I don't totally know how to do this, that's okay. I cast on and start with step one. Um, Trust that by the time I get to step two, I will be at the place in step one where I'll be able to see what I'll be able to understand it and see it. And then if I don't, I ask for help. Yeah. And there's lots of ways to ask for help, especially with the technology we have now. Like, if you're a hands-on person, most yarn shops have like help times where you can call ahead and schedule to have someone help you. Sometimes you have to pay a small amount to do that, but that's okay. For less expensive options, check your local library. Lots of times there are local knit groups that meet at libraries or other places. And even if you've never been, maybe you're in a place where you're able to go in and just ask somebody a question and they can help you. But start the work so that they can work with what you have on your needles and show you if you're a person who needs to be shown stuff to learn. If you have online knitting friends, try getting online and seeing if that works. Like you have two online friends right here. You can hit us up if any of the other situations don't work. Mostly hit Annika up because they're way better at teaching things, but yeah. I'm just looking around my studio thinking like, okay, what tips do I use? I would say a tip I have too. This can work for everybody. Love the materials you're using. So if there's a yarn you don't love, but you're like, oh, it's within my budget, don't get it. There are tons of resources to get yarns you do love, like a Community Fiber Fund I know has yarn. You could reach out to there and request a yarn, or within your budget, get the best yarn you can within your budget. As close to get the yarn you love within your budget. Don't like
and I want to like support this by saying like if you don't love the feel of Red Heart Super Saver, because like a lot of people don't, like that's cool. There are so many other budget acrylics that feel
that work. Yeah.
way different and are about the same price for the same yardage, and like feel better or feel softer or different or whatnot. Like there's other options. You don't have to be stuck with just that one. So.
And if you want 100% wool, one thing I'll recommend is Holstgarn, which is HOLSTGARN.DK. That's their website, and they're in Denmark. And they have really reasonable prices, and it's like $10 shipping. So you can easily get a sweater's worth for like $30, including shipping. Oh, 100% wool. It's fingering weight, and you have to wash the spinning oil out of it, but there are videos on that, and it's like a good budget 100% wool.
The other thing too is that Knit Picks has a lot of good 100% wool options for a decently cheap price, and like a couple of times a year they do their $1, $2, $3 sale too, where like the majority of their yarns will be on sale for $1, $2, or $3 a skein, and like including their wool yarns, and that's also a really good option too.
Also,
I think
Webs, which is www.yarn.com. They always have a closeout section, and I think it's called Grandpa's Garage Sale and sales that always have 100% wools in them. So that might be a way to get some. And then there's always, if even those are inaccessible and you really want 100% wool, reach out to Fiber Community Fund or I forget. I should know this, but let me look it up. Fiber Community Fund. So on Instagram. And yeah. Let's see what else. Storing and organizing your yarn and projects. I think a tip I use is keep things visible, because it's really easy to forget what you have.
Yep.
And so when you pick a new pattern that you want to knit, if you really want to knit from your stash and you don't log or keep your stash logged somewhere, which I think is a good helpful tip, go through your bins of what you have and make sure you don't already have a yarn that would work. And that's why I like logging my stash. It helps keep me remembered of what I have.
Yeah, all of my yarn is currently in the bookcase and 2 crates next to my bookcase in my room. But I do have the majority of my yarn logged in a Google Sheets document too.
Yeah, and I track my unravel
by weight and whatnot. So.
Also, a tip I have too, and this is something I'm just beginning to embrace, is being realistic about yarn usage. So I had all these little scraps and bits and bobs that the yarn was beautiful and I couldn't bear to get rid of it. So I was holding on to it and I was like, oh, I'll use it for something in a pattern. But I find that realistically, I do not do that. I instead use other yarns. So I recently went through those and put them all in my scrap afghan. Like put them in the bowl that I'm using to make my scrap afghan that I'm crocheting that from. So I think that's been a tip I've learned that's been helpful. I don't know that I have anything else. Do you?
My tip is to keep the yarn that you're setting aside for a specific project especially once you've started said project, all together in a bag and keep it with all the materials that you're using for that project. That way, like, once you get to the step where you need those materials, you don't have to like scramble around to be like, where the freak did I put this?
And that also helps in the tip we gave earlier of always having yarn with you. Like, I have my project bags and they have all the yarn for that project and pattern in it in the bag, and needles I'll need, so that when I have to head out, I can just grab a bag for whatever project I want to work on and I know everything's there.
Yep.
Because this has happened to me. Nothing sucks more than bringing a project and getting somewhere where you're going to be a while and knitting and realizing you don't have everything you need for the next step and then not being able to knit.
Yep. I don't know that I have any more tips.
I don't either, I think. So we'll end there. If you want to know anything, like, feel free to comment, like, hey, what are your tips for this? Like, list specific things. Then we could do another video and cover all of those too.
Yeah.
By the way, Annika, I was looking and Imelda's still alive.
Woohoo!
I know. I'm going to have you look at her when you're here, though. So.
Which is less than a month away. Woohoo!
I know. Yay! Okay, in case anybody didn't see, I also posted a picture of the beginning drop spindle kit that I got, that I'm really excited about, and I communicated with Amoni of Hopkins Fiber Studio, and she is going to hold on to it for me until December 31st when I draw a winner, and she is just going to ship it directly to the winner, which is awesome, because I'm like, why use the fossil fuels to ship it twice if she's willing to hold on to it, which she's awesome and was totally willing to do that. So, yeah. And I think that's it.
Sweet.
Okay, party people. See you later. Happy Vlogmas Makeup Day 21. Bye. Let me turn this off.